This here is my Boland's 1254 Husky. I've had this for a couple years. I haven't really done much with it other than when I first got it, it was not running. So I did some pretty funky wiring to see if the engine would run, which it does. Runs pretty healthy actually. So I gotta work on a starter. That was my only thing I couldn't get running, but I had to pull start it and that won't generate, so I'm gonna see if there's a rebuild kit for that, because those aren't cheap to buy new or reman. So I figured this is a good project to show on YouTube. This is the typical tractor that a lot of people will buy to start pulling with, and this is the typical condition you can get them in for the cheap low price of, I think I paid like $200 for this thing. Now this is a good pulling tractor for a stone boat. I don't know how it will do with a transfer sled with the stock engine and gearing on it, but I know this thing pulls really strong and really slow, so that's why they're very good for stone boat. Also, this has a locking rear differential which comes stock, no modification needed. All it is on this wheel here, see the end of it, kind of like a locking hubcap you find in old trucks. You gotta lock it in 4-wheel drive. This thing here, you just tighten it up and it becomes like a posi. So that helps out too. So as of right now, like I said, all I've done is I tried to clean it up the best I could, being that this thing was missing some parts. I threw a car battery in there, this is what I had. This is not stock, so I had a hard time wiring that up because there's no wire diagram for it, and I'm no electrician. So, like I said, this was running, so I know the engine is good. So I'm going to start a new little project with this. I know I got a lot of projects started now that are not necessarily buttoned up, but I figured this is a good little cheap project. Basically, I'm going to try to do as best I can to put no money in this thing and just get it up and running. So, quick little update on that. So today what we're going to do is, the reason why I kind of put this in the back burner and stopped working on it was because the steering arm here, the ball fell out of the arm, so that's no longer connected. Went to Tractor Supply. I picked one of these up. Now it's not the right one for this machine, but it's doable. I can make this work. So we're going to be putting this on that arm and get this thing steering again. So let's get into it. So we're going to start by taking the old ball off of the steering arm here. It shouldn't be too hard. And there it is. So there's the old one. This is the new one. Obviously the new one's a lot smaller, which may be an issue, but we'll find out. Throw that one away. See, what I'm doing is just going to get a nut, put this on here, find out the length. I'll have to cut this end off on this control arm here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to weld this bolt on the end of it, which will give me the adjustment for the length of this. I can screw it in and out. and get it right where I need to be up here in this bracket. So, alright, so I get the new one here bolted in, just temporarily bolted in. I'm going to take this arm, I'm going to line it up and turn the steering so that it would have been in the right place for the angle of the steering. So now that those are lined up where the old part would have been, I can now measure, make a mark down here where I want to cut this arm so I can weld the bolt onto the end of the arm. So that'll be my next step. So upon further review, I was looking at it, and before I go and start cutting this arm here, what I did was clean this bolt up a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is I put the bolt all the way in, so it's bottomed out inside this the ball joint. I'm going to make a mark on it. So that's where I know it is bottomed out. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take this bolt back out, find out where the halfway point is by measuring it, making another mark. Then I'll put it back in so that this bolt is halfway, so I have adjustment in and out, and then I will measure this control arm and cut this to weld the bolt onto the end of it. So let's find out where the halfway of these threads are. So I got it marked halfway. I'm putting it back in. And it was right about here. That should be about halfway. Make sure that this is still in line where it should have been. Right about there is pretty good. Take my Sharpie and make a mark right here. Now remember, when cutting steel, it's a lot easier to cut more off than it is to add to the steel. So I get my mark here. Basically, I'm going to cut it on this side of the mark instead of here, so it gives me a little bit more room to play with. If I got to grind it down, I can. Alright, so I got the shaft is cut. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it in place where it was. Line it back up with this arm here. It looks about right. So I'm going to take this part here and those two match. So I'm going to weld these two together and it should be good to go. Alright, let's take it all back off. Alright, so basically what I got is a little drill press vise here. Put the arm in it. I'm going to try to do is line this up the best I can. Put a tack in it. Make sure it's straight. Then I will start welding it. Basically what I did is I cleaned these up. Made a little bit of a area there. A little more room for weld. So it's a little better penetration. And we'll see what happens. Alright, so I got 2 passes on this. It's not too bad if it'll focus. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind it down, make sure I got some good penetration, make sure I didn't miss any spots. And if I'm happy with it, we'll install it. Alright, so I got it all ground down. Looks pretty good. Camera's not really focusing on it, but there we go. Pretty good. So that will hold for the steering. The tractor's not going to be going 80 miles an hour down a highway, so that will hold nicely. So let's reinstall it and see how it works. Alright, so it's all reconnected down below. Connected up in front. Up here. And here goes the test. Alright, so you can see it. It is hitting the arm right there. But that is mainly because this tire is off the rim. And it only just barely touches the rod right there. And that is maxed out anyways, so it's only just barely touching. I do believe that's just because the tire is off the rim. And there it goes that way. So the steering on this tractor is fixed. So in the next video I may turn around and put a tube in these tires. Or I might grab some tires off my scrap pile for now, toss them on there, get it up and running, make sure it's all good to go. I would like to keep these stock tires on it, only because I want to try to keep this thing as stock as possible. I will be running those tires up until the point where I believe those tires will no longer work for me. But I will run these tires. They don't look like they're all that bad. I mean, they are dry rotting. But for what I want to do with them, so I'm going to try to keep this project real cheap, real easy, and in a way that anybody can just find an old tractor like this, whether it be Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, wherever, find a good deal, and bring an old tractor like this back to life for next to nothing. So be the start of a pretty good project, I think.